They say money can't buy happiness. They're wrong. But what they don't tell you is that money can certainly buy you a stunningly effective betrayal. This is a photo of me 3 years ago on my wedding day. Visual, a lavish, happy wedding photo of Evelyn and Derek. I was the heir to the Harrington fortune, worth over $4 billion. I had a sprawling estate in the Hamptons, a private jet, and a protective family trust that was supposed to keep my legacy safe. I looked at my handsome, simple husband, Derek, and truly believed I had found the one thing money couldn't buy: unconditional love. That was my first, most expensive mistake. 18 months into the marriage, I came home to find divorce papers laid out on the mahogany table. Derek was standing there, not with love, but with the cold, calculating look of a lawyer. He laughed, a deep, triumphant sound, and then he confessed the whole, ugly truth. He hadn't just married me, he had married my money, and thanks to a complex legal loophole he exploited, he had successfully transferred the entire billion-dollar family trust's control to himself. He looked at the only woman who ever loved him for who he was, or who he pretended to be, and said, "You, Evelyn, are no longer a billionaire heiress. You are just a woman with $0. And I am your rightful heir. Get out of my house." That moment, when I was thrown onto the street with nothing but the clothes on my back, was the end of Evelyn the heiress. It was the birth of Evelyn, Before I tell you exactly how I went from being a billionaire to being utterly homeless and the brilliant, devastating legal trap my father built that my husband completely missed, I need to know: which 2 major cities in the US or UK are you joining us from? Let the world know where our audience is. And if you believe that a good mind can defeat even the most ruthless greed, please hit the like button and subscribe right now. You're about to witness the most expensive divorce in history. The billion-dollar divorce, my husband's zero-sum game. My name is Evelyn Harrington. My father built his empire from the ground up, and by the time I was 25, the family trust held assets exceeding $4 billion. My life was a gilded cage. Every man I met either wanted my father's approval or my bank account. Then I met Derek. He was a charming, slightly rough around the edges bartender at a high-end resort in the Caribbean. He claimed he didn't even know my family name. He drove a beat-up pickup truck. He listened to me. He made me feel normal. That was the greatest illusion he ever sold. My family lawyer, Mr. Stern, was suspicious. He insisted on a prenup, and I, eager to prove my love, readily agreed. The prenup was ironclad. Any assets I brought into the marriage from the trust remained separate property. Derek signed it without argument, saying, "I just want you, Evelyn." I felt utterly secure. I thought my father's brilliant legal team had protected me. The first year of marriage was perfect, or perfectly engineered. Derek was attentive, but he was also subtly ambitious. He started talking about business ventures. "Evelyn," he'd say while massaging my shoulders, "your trust is losing millions in taxes. It's just sitting there. My friend Marcus, he has this revolutionary tech startup. If we, just for the short term, transfer 10% of the trust's liquid assets into a joint-owned LLC that invests in his company, we could save millions in capital gains, and the LLC would hold the asset." I was an heiress, not an accountant. My father had taught me how to manage a company, not the fine print of offshore tax codes. I was accustomed to signing what the lawyers presented. Derek had subtly shifted the control narrative. I consulted Mr. Stern, the trust's trustee. Stern warned me, "Do not commingle separate funds, Evelyn." But Derek had an answer for everything. He argued that the LLC was a separate entity, jointly managed, and that the trust would be the senior partner. Against my better judgment, blinded by love and Derek's detailed, convincing presentations, I signed off on the transfer of $400 million into the joint LLC. This was the first major crack in my father's fortress. Over the next 6 months, Derek convinced me that Mr. Stern was too old-fashioned and was deliberately slowing down my business ventures. The second crack, Derek somehow engineered a scenario where Mr. Stern was briefly suspended as trustee due to an alleged conflict of interest, a baseless legal maneuver orchestrated by Derek and his partners. The final, fatal crack, Using the legal precedent of the $400 million commingled asset in the joint LLC, Derek's legal team successfully argued that I had shown a clear intent to treat the trust assets as marital property. When the court temporarily froze the trust to investigate Stern's conflict, Derek's carefully planted legal associate stepped in as the provisional trustee. 1 week later, I came home. Derek was waiting. He tossed the divorce papers onto the table. "Sign them, Evelyn. You get nothing." I stared at the papers, my mind reeling. "But the prenup. It protects my assets." Derek smiled, a cold, predatory gleam in his eyes. He picked up my signed prenup, tore it into small pieces, and let the scraps flutter to the marble floor. "The prenup protected separate property, Evelyn. But thanks to your brilliant idea to invest $400 million into our joint LLC, our lawyers successfully argued that you deliberately commingled the funds, thereby destroying the separate property designation of the entire trust. Since the trust's assets are now disputed marital property, and the trust requires an active trustee, and guess who is the provisional trustee now? I control it all. The trust now controls the shares, the properties, the cash. I own the debt, and I own the wealth." He then delivered the lines that would fuel my revenge. "Your father was smart, but I'm smarter. You are officially worthless. Get out of my house, $0 woman. Your father's $4 billion is now officially mine." He had stripped me bare. The shock was paralyzing. I stumbled out, leaving my keys, my wallet, and my identity behind. I had to walk 3 miles down the Hamptons Road just to find a public bus stop. For 2 weeks, I lived on the street, using the kindness of strangers and my last few dollars to eat. The shame was debilitating. How could a woman with a $4 billion estate be homeless? It was during this emotional low that my mind, the mind my father had trained, finally cleared. I remembered something my father had said years ago. "Evelyn, never trust a single layer of protection. There must always be a killer switch only you know about." I immediately contacted the only person I knew I could trust implicitly, Liam Chen, my father's young, brilliant protege and personal financial analyst who had been excluded from the trust's management. Liam met me in a dingy coffee shop. I told him everything. He listened, his face grim. Then he smiled, a small, knowing smile. "Derek got the trust, Evelyn. But he only got the structure. He didn't get the contingency." Liam pulled out a single, heavily encrypted flash drive. He explained the final, brilliant layer of protection my father had built. The family trust was not just a legal document, it was a digital fortress. It had 2 secret clauses. The integrity trigger, the trust's terms stipulated that if the primary beneficiary, me, was deliberately and fraudulently removed from control, or if the trustee, Derek, was proven to have committed financial malfeasance against the founder, my father, or me, the trust would automatically trigger its final contingency. The kill switch. The contingency was simple and devastating. The moment the integrity trigger was pulled, all $4 billion in assets would be instantly liquidated and transferred to an offshore, anonymous environmental charity in Liechtenstein. Derek would control a trust with 0 assets, and the money would be gone forever. My father hadn't protected the money for me. He had protected it from people like Derek. We had to prove Derek's malfeasance. Liam and I spent the next month digging. We found that Derek's friend, Marcus, and the revolutionary tech startup were both shell companies Derek had established years ago, specifically for this purpose. The $400 million hadn't been invested. It had been laundered through a series of offshore accounts owned by Derek's true partner, his own high-powered corporate lawyer, who had helped him orchestrate the trustee swap. I scheduled a final meeting with Derek and his lawyer, officially to discuss the division of marital property. We met at the trust's headquarters. Derek swaggered in, acting like the master of the universe. Derek's lawyer, Ms. Harrington, your ex-husband now controls the trust. We advise you to accept a small settlement and sign a non-disclosure agreement. I smiled, a genuine, cold smile of victory. I don't need a settlement, Derek. You were right. I am a woman with $0. But you're about to be a man with 0 assets. I nodded to Liam. Liam produced the evidence of the money laundering and the shell companies, proving that Derek's sole intent was fraud, not business. This action, taken during the marriage to exploit the trust, was the integrity trigger. Derek froze. His lawyer's face went white. Liam then addressed the legal team. As per Clause 7.3 of the Harrington Family Trust, the integrity clause has been activated. Within the next 24 hours, all assets will be liquidated and transferred to the St. Jude Environmental Fund. Mr. Derek has successfully gained control of a trust worth exactly $0. Derek lunged at me, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. You ruined me. You had everything. I looked at him, standing in the marble hall of the building that used to be mine. You stole the trust, Derek. You didn't steal my father's intelligence. He taught me that if you can't be trusted with the love, you shouldn't be trusted with the money. You married a gold digger, Derek. Me. He was left with nothing, no money, a reputation as a notorious financial fraudster, and a divorce that made him a global punchline. I was left with my freedom, my name, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that my father's final lesson was the most valuable inheritance of all.